Wait, I need that. Oh, hi everyone, Dolan here, and this is an extremely empty room. As you guys may or may not know, I finished with my freshman year of college and it's time to go home. But some people have had some questions about college. Much better. So as I said, I'm finished with my first year of college, and that made me really sit back and kind of reflect on a lot of things. One of which being the fact that a majority of you dudes are a lot younger than I am, meaning that college is something that's kind of in a realm that no one quite understands. You know, I know that when I was growing up I had a lot of questions about high school, so I thought I would ask around, get some questions from all of you guys, Twitter, on Instagram, on streams, and all that kind of stuff, and I've kind of compiled all those questions so I can hopefully answer some of the questions about college that a lot of people might have that kind of make it seem as scary as it is. So let's start with a very important question. What is college? So college is something that we do after high school or secondary school, I think is what it's called in other countries, where basically you further your education, but this time, instead of just sitting in a place learning a bunch of stuff that everybody's learning, it's kind of focused around your particular major or what form of education you want to go into. For example, at the beginning of college, I was going for music education, so I took a lot of music classes, I took a lot of education classes that would help me learn to teach children, and on top of that I was also learning a lot about music, so I knew about the subject that I wanted to teach. Does that make sense? Oh boy. However, halfway through my freshman year of college, I decided that I wanted to switch gears and I kind of wanted to focus more towards filmmaking, so I dropped music education as a major and I picked up what few photography classes kind of apply to a film student, because unfortunately the college that I go to got rid of the film department about 2 years ago, but I'm still learning a lot of stuff and it's specifically geared towards what I want to do in my life, so that's kind of what college is all about. You can go to college for a bunch of different things, like there are arts, there's everything to do with STEM. You can go for, I know that I have friends in there for welding and auto shop, and you can become a mechanic, and you can do basically anything. College is so that you can further that education. Now, of course, college isn't for everybody, and I'm not going to sit here and spew that everybody needs to go to college, but if it's something that you think would benefit you, I highly recommend it. So some of the first questions that we have here come from Just Doug. He says, is it really the super crazy parties that movies make it out to be? Not always. Now there is a huge difference between what we call community colleges and what we call universities. Community colleges tend to be smaller, there tend to be 2-year programs instead of 4-year programs, which are universities, and it just kind of generally has a more sense of community, which is kind of the whole community college, you see, with that. Yeah, there can be that kind of stuff, but it's not necessary. For example, I didn't go to any parties this year or anything like that, so while it can be party central up in hither, it's not necessarily like that all the time. It's definitely not what they make it out to be in the movies, especially when it comes to community colleges. Now, universities are a different story. Universities do tend to be more party centric depending on the places that you go, but that's not necessarily that all they have to offer, because that is such a small portion of what college can be, and it's definitely not a necessary part of college. I had the best time of my life this year, and I didn't go to anything like that. So it's definitely not like it is in the movies for the most part. Do you think it's worth it? I assume he means it's being college, which I definitely think it's worth it. As I just talked about, I think that being able to further your education and learn things that you can't necessarily learn in a traditional high school or secondary school setting is incredibly important, especially when you want to refine a skill to a certain degree. Like, they don't teach you everything you need to do to become a teacher in high school or in secondary school. I'm just going to say high school because I'm an American. They don't teach you everything that you need in high school, especially when it comes to things like being a teacher, becoming a mechanic. They kind of give you like the opening principles, but it's not like, it's definitely not to the extent that's required to become something greater than that. I definitely think it's worth it, especially when you go to things like community colleges first and go take maybe your first 2 years there and then you move on to a university after that, because community colleges tend to be way cheaper. So when we're talking about money worth, is it worth it? It's definitely worth it to go to a community college before a university, because the costs tend to be way cheaper. And so I think the amount of money that you're paying to go to a community college to further your education, even for those 2 years, is definitely worth it. He also asks, was it fun? It was incredibly fun. I met so many new people, and I made so many new friends, and I learned so much that it was just a blast. When you go to a college and you learn about certain things that, like, you didn't get to learn about in high school, you of course tend to have more fun, but just the fact that you can meet so many more people who tend to be like you because they're also wanting to focus on that one particular trait of themselves, or that one job that they want to go after. You meet so many new people and you can have the time of your life. The college dorms and the residence halls are fantastic for meeting new people, unless of course you're in a wing with basketball players. But basketball players aside, it is incredibly fun. I know particularly that my residence hall was so filled with an assortment of different kinds of people, and us all living together really kind of made us learn each other's stories. And we had people from all across the world. I know I had a bunch of people from Russia here. We had one person from Brazil. We had a bunch of people from around the country coming together, living together, and it was a blast. And finally, Just Ugg asks, was it more or less stressful than regular school? Now, this is going to vary for... Are you just like sneaking up on me like bit by bit? Do you want to go? Do you want to? Yeah, you do. There you go, buddy. There you go. What a good boy. Now that's just a good pupper. So this is going to vary for everybody. Of course, people, how they handle stress and the different kinds of workloads that they're going to be taking, those are all going to be completely different for every person. But for me personally, it was so much less stressful than regular high school. I know personally that in high school, you are there for 5 days a week, you're there for 7 hours a day, non-stop. It's just class after class after class, and then you eat lunch, and then you just keep on going to classes. It's not like that in college. You get so much more freedom with your schedule when it comes to putting together the things that you need to do. Basically, college just says, hey, here's a list of... Actually, hang on. Excuse me, sir. These are the list of things that you must do to graduate from this university. Oh, gee, thanks. Do I have to, like, take them all at once? No, not at all. Just take it in the next 4 years. I don't care, dude. Just do what you want. You're an adult now. I don't want to walk into you. I should probably go this way. Oh, thanks, random professor dude. Basically, there's just a list of requirements that they need in each category for you to graduate, and just so long as you do that along with the requirements for your major, you can take them whenever. Now, I know a lot of people take them in their first few years just so they can get them out of the way so that when you get closer to graduation, it's not as stressful. That's a very good idea. I would recommend doing that. I didn't do that. So next year at my community college, it's going to be super stressful. So I would definitely recommend getting a lot of the what we call general studies out of the way first so that you can focus more on your major as your college education progresses. But it's not nearly as stressful as high school, personally. I definitely think that being in college was a lot more lax, a lot more fun. And on top of that, another reason that it's not as stressful is because that you're taking a lot of classes that you love doing. Like, I wasn't stressed out this semester because most of my stuff had to do with film, and I kind of like making videos. So it was a lot of work, but it was a lot of work that I enjoyed doing. Like, I know I turned in a lot of the assignments that I also uploaded to YouTube because I'm kind of using this as like a portfolio of sorts so that I can kind of when I want to end up getting a job in video, I can kind of hand them this and be like, hey, yeah, no, I do this. This is all of my work. So I would turn in assignments that I would work hours upon hours on, and then I would upload them to YouTube. For example, Take a Stand was one of my finals for one of my video classes, and I had so much fun doing it, and if I would have spent those hours on, say, an English essay, I would have had a much less enjoyable time. But because that was part of the classwork that was assigned to me, I had a blast doing it, so it was a lot less stressful. The next few questions we have come from Diamond DMC on the SB Hub server. Hello, good sir. Thank you for submitting so many questions. He says, okay, first question, how hard is it to manage your time between college, family and friends, work, etc.? That is an incredibly good question, and I'm so glad you asked it, because there are a lot of difficult things that come to juggling all these different aspects of life, but it's very important to learn them, because these are things that you're going to be trying to juggle for the rest of your life. So I think college is a very good way to kind of dip your pinky toe into the water of life. And life is moist. Life is very, very moist. Managing your time can be incredibly difficult, especially when you go into college, because that's your first experience living alone. You're not necessarily living alone, but you're not living with your parents like you would back in high school or, you know, earlier on. So when you start throwing things like family and friends and homework and regular work and all these things, it can seem a bit stressful. But that's why I really recommend that you kind of put together a planner. Now, a planner is an incredibly useful tool, especially when you're trying to manage all these different aspects of life. You can kind of break down your day into times. Now, this is a very good way to start. You don't have to live your whole life with a planner, but it's a very good way to kind of get that mentality that, okay, I need to set aside 30 minutes so I can do my homework or however long you think it's going to take, and then I can hang out with my family, or I can hang out with my friends, I can call my family back home, and then I have work from this time to this time. So you plan it out ahead of time so that when you finally get to that moment, you know what to do. Because a lot of stress that college students face is that all of this kind of approaches up on you at once. Like, you wanted to do your homework, but now you have to go to work, and then you said you were going to hang out with your friends, but you didn't, because you ended up working a little bit later, and it can be a bit stressful. But if you plan ahead and you really work towards better setting goals for your time, I think that's a very good way to start. Now, another part about college that Diamond kind of asks on this question that I want to touch on is the issue of family, because a lot of times when you go to college, you're separated from your family for a very long time, and that can be difficult. I kind of had the luxury of going to a community college that isn't very far away from my hometown. You know, it's just a few hours away. So on the weekends, I would sometimes drive back home. I can see my family, I can see my friends who are still in high school, but I also, on top of that, have the very lucky luxury of having a lot of high school friends go to college with me. For example, Johnny Seafang and Elderwood both go to college with me, so we can spend a lot of time together, and I'm very thankful for that. But college is a very good way for you to make new friends as well. Every time you go on vacation, you get to come back and see your family, if you're so fortunate to do that, and I think that really helps, kind of knowing that eventually you will see them, and there's always phone calls, and there's always texting and Skype and FaceTime and what have you in this new generation, so you get to talk to your family almost as much as you would at home if you have that means of communication, which I think is really important, because that means that you can kind of juggle that along with everything else. Wow, I'm rambling on this subject forever. So that's how you do it. You plan ahead, and you can meet new people and talk to your family on FaceTime. FPO5 says, why was college so stinking expensive? I don't know, they like to watch you suffer in loans until you're 60. Or maybe they need to keep funding whatever experimental food they're putting in the cafeteria. I'm sorry. Yeah, I went there. Look, guys, college cafeteria food's not the best. The next question he asks is, apart from having a job and hanging out with friends, how stressful is college itself? I kind of touched on this when I answered Just Doug's question, but college is not that stressful. Just Doug kind of asked me to compare it to high school, but I'm just going to focus on college itself. Basically, it's not as stressful as high school was, in my experience. Everybody has a different experience. I know that my friend who's going to a university right now, she's not having the best time. She's super overloaded and super stressed out, which is why I recommend that you start off with a community college if those resources are available to you. It's cheaper, the workloads tend to be less heavy, and more professors get to work with you for more time, you know? So I feel like being in a community college, I can talk to my professors when I'm having issues with homework. I can actually get help from them. I can, I know everybody around me, and the workload tends to be not as heavy when it comes to community colleges. So it's not as stressful when it came to being at college itself. Of course, I had a job, which I also really loved, so that wasn't very stressful. And hanging out with friends Of course, trying to juggle that, like I said before, can be a bit difficult, but in the end, it's not nearly as stressful as I thought it would be, which is kind of why I want to make this video, because there seem to be a lot of scary aspects to college, but it's not as bad as it seems, and it's so much more fun, and it is not nearly as stressful as people make it out to be. And the final question that I really wanted to touch on, this is an amazing question, so thank you again, Diamond, for asking these. He says, the format for high school and college are completely different, like class schedules and classes. Was it hard to adapt and learn all about college when you had no experience? Now, when it comes to new things, obviously it's going to be a little bit difficult because you're not entirely sure what you're doing and you haven't gotten into a routine or a motion, you know. Things can be scary because things are new and things are different, but it doesn't have to be like that. Of course, it is always a little bit interesting to kind of learn how new things work. I guess that's just kind of how my brain is. Like, I want to know how it works. But when you take me out of the old and put me into the new, I tend to not like that. So that's why when I went to college, I was really surprised when the kind of transition from high school schedules to college schedules was so nice for me, because I don't genuinely like change. But this was a good change. The class schedules for high schools in America, if you are not an American audience member, hello everybody else out there, it tends to be, you start school at about like 8 o'clock in the morning, and then you go all day up until about lunch. Some high schools let you go off campus for lunch, and then you come back, and then you just keep on going until about like 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then if you have after school stuff, you stay in that school, and then you do those activities, and then maybe you have a game for athletes or something like that, and then you finally get to go home at maybe like 8 p.m. So it's like 12 hours of being at the school if you are a fully loaded student. In college, it's not like that. When it comes to putting together a schedule, they have certain classes that will always be at this time on this day. For example, I'll take my choir class that I was in all year. Choir in college for Northwest College is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 11 o'clock to noon, and that's all 3 days. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're not taking choir. It's not the same thing every day. It's not even like a block schedule. It's just 1, 1, 1. Then you start getting into the other classes, because as I said in that little sketch thingy, just so long as you get all of it done. Really, heater? It's not even that cold out. Why are you on? You kind of ruined. And now there's a train. Oh boy! But just so long as you get everything done that you need to get done before you leave that college, the rest is really up to you. So you get to put together your schedule in a much more customizable way than high school could ever allow you. You're not in school for 7 straight hours a day. For example, you might have class from 11 to 12, and then you could have like a 3-hour break where you could eat lunch and hang out with friends, and then you could maybe take a math class at like 3 in the afternoon. Now, something interesting about college that you can't get with high school that I really liked is that it's not all constrained to just this tiny little time frame. You get almost all day. I think most classes, they range anywhere from starting at 8 in the morning to starting at about 6:30 at night. But the night ones tend to be only 1 day a week. I was taking a public speaking class that only met on Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 9:10. Like, it was a little bit longer of a class time, but we only met that one time during the week. So it's definitely necessary to have a schedule with you when you first start out, so you know all the different buildings that things are in and which rooms they're in and then which days that you're taking these classes. But it's so much more freeing of a feeling to be in a college class than it is a high school class, because you can get so much more time, and if you live on campus, you can go home in those 3 hours. You can go back to your room and work on your homework or hang out with friends or call your family or make a YouTube video. That's kind of how I managed to continue making videos all throughout college, because I didn't think that it was going to be possible, but they make it so easy for you to do your classes but also be your own person, and I think that's a really big inspiration as far as college as a whole goes. College is really meant to kind of make you you. And I think that's really important. So that's why I highly recommend that you go to college. And I'm super excited for the next year of college when I go back. I think I'll be in the same room so I don't have to annoy your roommate by making these videos every single week. If you guys are new here, subscribe. If you want to think about college, why don't you tell me what college you're thinking about going to in the description down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think. If you guys have any other kinds of questions that I didn't cover in this video, make sure to ask them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. So thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later. Bye now.